Arthur was challenging his leadership team to ensure that every decision we made was going to provide the best possible fan experience 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now.
This isn't about having the Final Four in the Super Bowl once. That's having a relevant stadium that is continued to be viewed as best in class so that we get multiple Super Bowls, multiple college football national championships. That's been the vision from the beginning.
As we started this pathway towards a new stadium, we really realized we were going to need a systems integration partner, and IBM played that role for us and did a tremendous job.
We actually built a mock-up of the stadium. In fact, we built 3 mock-ups with 3 different possible sets of technologies of the stadium at a facility several miles down the road from here, where we were able to take all of the different possible technology choices, all of the different possible implementations and visions for that technology, and put them together into a functional whole.
I like to say we built a future flexible network, and all the technology that we continue to deploy is built around this notion of being future flexible. And that's exactly the network that IBM has designed and deployed for us. I ultimately selected what's called a GPON, or a Gigabit Passive Optical Network. This is fiber to the edge.
We ran over 4,000 miles of fiber optic cable throughout the venue out to the endpoints. We've got over 15,000 Ethernet ports, 1,800 Wi-Fi access points, 700 DAS antennas, 2,500 IPTVs, 500 security cameras, 400 active doors controlled by security, and over 700 point-of-sale units all connected to this fiber.
IBM built right on site here in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium what is probably the largest room outside of the field itself, a 6,500 square foot DAS head-end room. The DAS head-end room is where all of the carriers can bring those antenna systems, base stations, electronics that connect your wireless signal to the wired signal of the internet and the telephone network so that you're able to connect and post online, call your friends, whatever you want to do.
What this translates into is amazing bandwidth capabilities now, but also decades into the future.
Then when we needed to put technology in our fans' hands, we wanted to give them control. We wanted to give them a companion to help them make the most of their game day experience. We were going to develop apps.
So we sat down and went through a 6 to 10 week process using IBM design thinking, using many people from all across the Falcons and Atlanta United organizations to really plot out what that fan experience was going to be when the stadium opened, and then what were some of those key ideas that allowed us to innovate in future years after the stadium was open.
IBM's team, the same team that develops world-class apps for the Masters or for Wimbledon, is the same team that developed our apps for Atlanta United, for the Falcons, and for the stadium.
Wayfinding in and around the stadium, transportation to and from the venue, digital ticketing to smooth out the process of entering the stadium, and the ability to buy, sell, and transfer tickets. Ask Arthur, which is a Watson integration that allows the fan to get information about the stadium or the venue. Integration with Waze and Lyft, and placing your order while you're waiting in line at the concession stand.
So if you're looking for gluten-free food, vegan food, guest services, first aid, do you have changing tables? Where do I park an RV? All of those types of things you can ask, and we have answers built in using Watson technology. When people ask me questions, that's where I go, I ask Arthur.
So with the IBM Data Center, it serves as sort of the heartbeat for our operations here from an IT perspective. Running in that is sort of our critical game day, point-of-sale type applications, video applications that need to be on site here.
The IBM Data Center is our gateway to the IBM Cloud. We use the IBM Cloud extensively to run our most sensitive applications and to ensure that we're backing up information frequently to ensure that we've got the resiliency we need to run events here in the stadium at all times.
We're pushing over 50 terabytes of data up to the IBM Cloud for backup on a monthly basis.
So when I was looking at the different needs that I had across the technology spectrum, IBM was the only one that truly thought different about what we were asking for. And they sought to understand my intent as well as the long-term vision that we had for the stadium.
With IBM's help, we are delivering one of the best fan experiences in sports and entertainment anywhere you'll see in the world.
Diving into the regulatory compliance as we see it, there is always a trouble when it comes to balancing innovation and regulatory compliance. Do note that I will be slightly biased towards the FSI industry, but a lot of the learnings and conclusions will be applicable across the industry. First of all, this is how the regulatory landscape looks like. And as always, it has been mind-boggling. And you can see that each country has its own needs and what you call requirements. It's interesting from the perspective that you can see, like for instance, the right of access of data. China is now addressing that through their new data privacy laws. And as you can see downstairs, all the way to number 8, rights in relation to automated decision-making and profiling. It's interesting, there's only Japan which actually has that into the regulations. So this is a varied regulations which banks are playing into, as well as other companies are actually dealing with. And this is just an example of privacy laws, and there's all other regulations to this. Next, the thing about regulators is they are no more are seen as fence keepers. They are actually pushing innovations. And we've already seen that right way ahead of the pandemic. In 2010, the UK government's behavioral insights team has already looked upon using behavioral science in policy design. IMF report has also highlighted how the wide application of behavioral science-inspired policy making would now become the de facto, especially in the future. On RegTech is catching up as companies are finding, or regulators are finding ways and means to use technology to regulate. And you can see the parts of this is already moving on faster in some areas like Australia and Singapore and in Hong Kong. Other areas are catching up, but that's the direction that it is flowing towards. One area that I would say that the emergence of digital banks and virtual banks will also drive the RegTech adoption, as digital banks and virtual banks have different issues to work with as well. Next, when you just focus on the banking itself, we all know that virtual banking in Hong Kong, as they call it, or digital banking in the wider space, is already coming on board. They are going to add a new dimension to regulatory pressure, as well as the regulators will also impose new regulations into this, while making sure that the innovation is supported. And lastly, we need to see this movement or the shaping of regulation as opportunities and not threats. And this is an example of how banks, when they do see opportunities or use an opportunity lens, the improvements is quite great. Like for instance, 29% of banks' traditional retail products-based revenue streams are at risk, which can be addressed if you start looking at it from a different perspective. But most important, you can't do it alone, and that's a given. Partnerships are required, and this is one of the areas that we'll be looking at in this conference or webinar, where we will be looking at how different companies as well as vendors can come together and create platforms and drive cloud-native innovation. And lastly, we are looking at a leveling of playing field. This is after years of operating without any advantage at all. Customers are now looking to show players that they want players to show value. And this is coming across not just in banking, but also in retail and manufacturing, even from B2C, and now it's moving on to B2B as well. While new players needed time to build customer base, that's not really true in this digital era. And traditional players are now under pressure to be as innovative as possible. The last thing I would like to leave is in the regulator space, one thing to look out for is the ESG push. Ever since the 2015 Paris Agreement, people have been talking about this in great length, and there will be definitely a lot of regulation pushing people to use innovative means to actually meet some of these commitments that companies and countries are making right at this moment. This is Saurabh Chitracha. He's a regional VP for Asia at IT Transformation and Strategy at Liberty Insurance Private Limited. Today, he will be talking to me or discussing to me, or at least letting me know how his company is facing the regulatory challenges and how they're looking at innovation. So, good afternoon, Sarah. How's things with you?
Thanks for inviting.
Sure, it's always been great. First of all, let's start out. Regulators always nowadays see themselves as catalysts of innovation. How has this shaped cloud in native innovation for FSIs like yourself?
So overall, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, this does help, right? So I'm not particularly talking about the current organization I'm working with. I'm talking in general, talking to the peers within the industry, and whether it is banking or insurance. One of the things is definitely this is quite helpful for us, in the sense where in the past, as a part of a program preparation, right, when you're talking about migration to cloud and adopting cloud native technology, you would need to factor in a lot of time in terms of regulatory approvals. And so with this kind of a landscape, what happens is there is a push inwards as well, and also a drive to ensure that we get on the bandwagon faster, but without compromising on the necessary security or compliance topics. So I mean, overall, this is definitely a welcome sign and gesture. But then again, it depends. I was very surprised to look at that snapshot of the regulations in your first page of the presentation, and that was, I mean, I had never seen that, and that's very interesting because it does show there is a varying degree of maturity, and that's where that also comes into play when you are thinking about rolling out these initiatives, whether related to cloud adoption within the different markets, within the different organizations.
Yeah, that's a good segue to what I wanted to actually ask in terms of the regulatory landscape being very varied. Now, we know Singapore, Australia, and Hong Kong regulators are really taking a proactive approach, but that's not the case for the rest of ASEAN. How does a company like yourself actually balance these different approaches?
Yeah, it's a very interesting one, right? So what happens is when you look at, let's say, when you get on a journey that you want to go into, you want to move to public cloud, whether it is AWS, whether it is GPC or Azure or any other cloud services or the cloud environment itself. So what happens is you need to look at all your countries or markets where you want to migrate to cloud. And then you basically do a due diligence or an initial analysis saying, hey, what does the regulatory landscape also look like? And then let's say the markets or the countries where you have basically the regulations are very much pro cloud, and as long as you have you've done your homework, you have done your data protection, you're ensuring that public data, private data or customer data is not exposed. So as long as you have done that exercise, which is a basic part of due diligence, you would do like a heat map saying, hey, let me start with here. This is my quick win. This could be slightly longer, medium term. Maybe in some of these markets are slightly longer term, because one of the challenges is that the regulatory approval can take time. You have to go into a lot of documentation in terms of providing the evidence, then waiting for the responses, then going backwards and forwards. So generally when you lay that kind of a roadmap, then you will put short, medium, and long-term wins, and that's how you will progress. I mean, that's how at least I have seen within the organizations I have worked with and having talked to other peers from the industry. So that's how normally the landscape is, or the migration roadmap is laid out, and then you proceed in that basically the format or the structure. You might still keep the structure might be the same, the methodology might still be the same. You might make some local tweaks depending on the local requirements from the markets, but then the overall methodology would still remain the same.
Today, we are talking about cloud native innovation and transformation. So I'm just wondering, there's lots of talk about in the market about Kubernetes and OpenShift, and which offers options for DevOps teams to especially deal and containerize legacy apps. But this requires willpower to do so. And for FSIs, are they still waiting, or do they have the willpower to move forward?
I think that's a very interesting question, Winston, because most of the organizations in the FSI space, barring the new age players maybe, have a lot of legacy. You're right. I mean, we have our systems which are very monolithic, and moving away from a monolithic, mainframe-based systems to microservices based is not an easy task, because you need to plan a lot. You need to think about the not just the security, but also the customer experience part, and also need to look at the skills, whether you have it internally to be able to do that, right? And those sound easy, but those are massive considerations which you need to keep in mind. And thinking from that perspective, normally what happens is sometimes you start doing it in parts. So you will not do, it's not even logical to boil the whole ocean and say that, hey, my entire application landscape, I'm going to move cloud native. That's simply not going to work, because that's going to be a lot of effort from the organizational perspective, not just in terms of the actual effort, but also identifying the right people, right? So you might not have in-house expertise, and then you need to rely on external providers and integration partners. And do you want to move everything at one go? That's a huge commitment you're talking about. So generally what is happening is there are pockets. So what we're doing is like a heat map, saying, hey, what are some of the things which we can move out easily onto cloud native? And we have started utilizing containerization services and Kubernetes, etc., in some of those parts. So, but like core components, like if I look at an insurance industry, giving an example, so I'll probably be a little more reluctant to move my policy admin systems onto cloud native, because that's my core system. And that is super complex because everything is interrelated. But then when you look at front end, some of the front end applications, I can potentially think of, but after doing the due diligence. So that's how I think a lot of organizations are approaching, and we are no different in that regard.
It's good to know. And I just want to highlight to everyone on the call, please, if you do have any questions, you can send it through the Q&A button, using the Q&A button, and we will look to ask or at least answer some of them. Back to you, Saurabh. Now, a part of the challenge of working with cloud native transformation is and development is the idea of infrastructure as code being part of DevOps. Now, this opens up new cans of worms in terms of security. If the infrastructure itself is not secure enough in the first place, what I wanted to ask is, how will this change the relationship between how FSIs work with cloud vendors?
So I think one of the things which we all know, I mean, the security within the cloud is kind of still quite strong. I mean, there have been very few breaches which have been observed, I mean, historically. But that doesn't guarantee basically what has not happened in the past is not going to happen in the future. Because as the landscape is evolving, the threats are also evolving. And so one of the asks will be more thorough due diligence in terms of proving the capabilities, and not just proving in the past, but also providing evidence of what are proactive measures which are being taken by the partners or the cloud vendors to kind of ensure that the security is still prime and it's of prime importance in terms of protection of customer data, in terms of protection of the employee data, for example, because when you talk about cloud native, it's not always the customer data. You're talking about Oracle or HRMS sort of applications, which are also having employee information. So what are measures being taken to kind of ensure that the security still remains? And one of the other things is the other aspect is also the security outside the cloud, which is the responsibility of the customer or basically FSIs. So on that front as well, there is a lot of action happening in terms of ensuring, and also because the regulatory requirements are changing, there is a more push towards that, and also from a customer and standpoint. So externally as well as internal pushes are there. So keeping those two factors in mind, there is a lot of focus on the security from the organizations, and organizations are basically investing a lot in cybersecurity, even from the structural changes that are happening. Like earlier, you would see, hey, CISO reporting into a CIO, but as the landscapes are evolving, I mean, CISOs are basically peers with the CIOs, and having those discussions in the leadership forums to ensure that, hey, we are not considering security as an afterthought, but more as a forethought. And so that's how I would say these are the two facets. And the relationship, obviously, with the suppliers is going to be more around proactive evidence of what you're doing versus what you have done, and also ensuring how as a FSI I can monitor and see on a regular basis, like what are some of the measures, these are some of my challenges, and how are you addressing it, and how can I be certain that real partnership comes into picture. So that's what my thought would be, Winston.
Okay. And a quick one as we move on to the next session. I'm just wondering, if you're given an opportunity to set a cloud infrastructure vendor's agenda in terms of driving cloud native development and solutions, what would be your top ask?
Two of them. Just two of them. One is security. How do you ensure that we are fully secure, and I mean historically and also going forward? So acting as true partners, providing that support. And the second is ease of use, right? So one of the things is technology evolves every few years or every few months, and then how do you ensure while we are adopting, we might not always have all the skill sets. So how do you ensure that you provide the right support so that we are easily able to use the service which you're providing without having to do a massive rework?
Okay, that's a good segue to the next section. So first of all, thanks a lot, Saurabh, for your answers. I'm sure everybody agrees with a lot of what you have said, and it resonates with everyone. Appreciate your time. Thanks, Saurabh.
Thanks a lot, Winston.
Cheers. So now the next question is, what are the popular use cases that is driving cloud native transformation? And what are the popular issues and challenges? Now, to lead that, we have Raymond Wong from IBM and Paul Witten from Red Hat, who will now take over the virtual stage. Paul, Raymond.
Thank you, Winston. And thanks, Saurabh, for sharing. I think it's always great as a technology provider to listen to our customers and partners on your thought process. And I hope later you hear something that will address some. So anyway, thanks, Winston. So for this segment, we will be going to some kind of a design thinking, kind of mini ones to really allow the participants to participate and give us your thoughts on some of the inhibitants that you might find in your cloud native journey. If we could bring up the next chart. And to do that, we kind of set a stage and a framework for each of you to participate as a certain persona. But let us set a context for this exercise. So banking being one of the largest industry in the world are facing, lots of digital transformation requirements, especially so over the last couple of years with, COVID impacting. They've got huge impact to launch new mobile applications and internet applications because, engagement at a branch, face-to-face engagement has become, more difficult. They're looking at, working with fintechs to create new innovative products and new services because online engagement and, actual face-to-face engagement may not be exactly, the same. So you need to kind of new ways of engaging and working with fintechs. They need to figure out how to leverage the fintech's innovation. E-payments, huge rollout of e-payments over the last couple of years. I think some organization or retailers has already stopped accepting cash as part of a transaction. So, enterprises, retailers, bankers are all rushing to roll out e-payments or integrate with, other e-payment platforms to allow the, consumers to be able to buy easily. And of course, with all this innovation and transformation they're looking at being more nimble as well. In the past, when you run a monolith application, at best you might get 1 or 2 releases a year. But in a mobile interaction and a mobile innovation world, people are expecting new features and new functions every month, every week to be rolled out. So that's something that the banks needs to be able to roll. And I don't think this is just bank, really is actually any organization that's going through a digital transformation, right? We're picking a bank just for today's exercise. And last but not least, with people working from home, even developers and IT personnel working away from the data center, away from the office, people need to have the right tools and the right expertise. And here we mean expertise that potentially are AI powered, so that they can do that work more effectively from remote location, from distributed locations, collaborate in distributed teams. So, companies are looking at how they could use tools to empower their people, right? And last but not least, in a bank or in government, being able to innovate is great, but there's still, regulations from central bank, from government policies that they need to adhere to. They cannot violate those in the name of innovation. So finding the balance is key to regulated industries. And so these are what businesses want moving forward. Now, the question is, how do they actually achieve it? I think the question is how. I think everybody knows what they want. The question is how. So I think we want to use this exercise to hear your views. And if you could, next slide, please. And we'd like to hear, from you as a specific persona, which plays a huge part in what businesses want. So in the banking world, in the previous slide, those are what businesses want. The head of application development has a huge role in doing that. So we thought, if you could help us play that role, and give us your thoughts in that role. What are your inhibitors? What are the challenges? What are the top things that comes to your mind? I think they'll be fantastic. And then Paul and myself will then hope that we address it in our subsequent presentation, right? So as the head of development, you lead a team of developers, you drive innovation, you are strong in core banking and has good Java app development background, great knowledge of the banking processes, but maybe a bit new to the cloud and looking at what are new capabilities you can get from the cloud. And of course, being a key role within organization for innovation, you are set to define the new architecture and new platforms of any new initiative. So that's really the persona that we hope you'll be playing. With that, I'll hand over to Paul to take us through the rest of the exercise.
I'm the go-to-market specialist for managed services. What we're doing today is what we call a design thinking exercise from IBM. It is a light version because of the virtual format here. Now, just remember, we've all got our application development hats on. What I'm going to do now is walk you through what we feel are the key pain points for the banking industry, but also across verticals, whether it's telco or commerce or manufacturing. All of these probably resonate with you as well. So the idea here is I'm going to walk you through this exercise, and the incentive for you today is you need to vote on what your top key pain points are. If you don't vote, my next presentation is going to go on for a very, very long time because I've got slides to address each of these key pain points. But because we're all short of time these days, everything's back to back and virtual, I'm going to focus on your top 3 or 4 pain points as you vote them in this exercise. So without further ado, let's look at the first pain point here. So the first one is around increased complexity. So our applications, our environments are getting more challenging when we've got cloud and legacy systems, we've got lack of visibility, central IT is taking too long. So business lines of businesses, you're using your credit card, getting SaaS non-approved solutions in the whole shadow IT. So that's the first key pain point for the head of application development. The next one here is your governance compliance challenges, data residency, and as Saurabh earlier pointed out, security requirements of moving workloads and data to the cloud. The next challenge we've got is around the lack of technical skills and capacity to manage all of these applications in the cloud, whether it's day 2 operations, or maybe it's your Kubernetes container-based applications. How do you manage the patching, the SLA uptimes of the platform? So that's the third challenge that we're putting in front of you today. The next one is, because you're head of app development, you've got some good Java skills. How do we adopt these to the cloud? How do we take these and make them containerized or build cloud native there? And we don't have time to learn the new stuff. We're spending too much time maintaining our legacy systems. We're drowning in technical debt. The next challenge is it takes too long to get an idea into production, whether it's legacy release processes, too many steps, the change control board is taking too long to approve our changes. What is blocking you there? Is this a key pain point? Getting to market faster, having that business agility. The next problem or pain point is the lack of visibility into what our users are doing. Are they logging into your system and not completing the process, not going through to the checkout? Are they unable to find the right features and functions in your services or application that are helpful to them? What is the user journey looking like? Is it enjoyable? What's the response times and so forth? You just can't see what's happening from the user's perspective. The next challenge is high CapEx costs. So moving from subscription-based or from perpetual licenses to more of a as a service consumption-based models, and basically saving on infrastructure costs as well. Next is our existing infrastructure. We've got a lot of challenges, whether it's on-premise, managing that efficiently, or if we go to the cloud, we don't have any governance and controls around spending or utilizing cloud resources. We just spin up VM machines and we leave them running. So at the end of the month or the end of the billing period, we get a big shock bill from AWS or from Azure saying we spent this much and we haven't allocated that budget. The next one is refactoring applications. It's not just a matter of lifting and shifting, putting your virtual machines into containers. It doesn't quite work like that. It doesn't give you the full benefits of cloud native applications. So how do we refactor, re-architect our applications to take advantage of these new technologies? And the last one here is we lack the skills to do these large scale migrations. Yes, we can start new pilot projects, but getting our legacy systems, our legacy Java systems, into the cloud is challenging. So what we're going to do here is we're going to open a poll shortly, and you're going to vote on what is your top challenge here. And based on that, we're going to prioritize based on the urgency and the priority of it there. So we've got urgency and importance. We've got the matrix down there. So basically, with my little helpers in the back end, they're running a mural board to take these sticky notes and prioritize them there. But what we want to focus on today is understand what you in the audience find is your biggest urgency and your highest importance there. And that's what I'll focus on in my next session. Okay, so with that, let's open up the poll. I'll leave this slide up, but the poll should pop up over the top. There we go. We've got multiple choice, so you can choose as many as you want. So I believe we've got 30 seconds. We've got countdown. I can hear the music in my head. Select what are your top challenge or challenges, and then these will be added up in the poll. So Raymond, while we're waiting for people to complete the poll, what do you think will be the most common one? Last time we ran this, it was the governance and compliance challenges. What do you think we'll see this time around?
I won't be surprised if we might see the same thing, but I think the last one where what popped out interesting was the skills challenges and the lack of technical skills. I'll be keen to see if this comes up the same today as well.
When I speak
Go ahead, sorry.
When I speak to C-levels, they always bring up the lack of cloud skills as a key barrier for them to innovate and to go cloud native. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's something interesting, because that has traditionally not been something that I think many clients surface, but I do see that challenge has become a key challenge is coming up. So that's interesting. I think no time. I'll be, no time to adopt new technologies is also, I think, coming up to be, especially during this pandemic time. I do realize that some of our clients actually or partners have found, trying to find time to adopt the new technologies was a challenge because they had other keeping the lights on tasks that came up to prominence as well. Not sure you see that in your engagements as well?
No, absolutely. There's always that juggling of resources between, hey, I got to innovate, I need to invest in new technologies or I'll be left behind. But at the same time, the budgets for IT are typically fixed. So you've got to allocate them between keeping the lights on, doing things more efficiently, and these new innovation projects. So I'll just check with our facilitators today. I've submitted my vote on the poll. Can we see the poll results? Where are these showing before I jump into my presentation? Aha, fantastic. So increased complexity is number one. I'm taking notes of these, so I hit the right slides. Governance is number two. I thought that would be number one. I was very close. Raymond, I don't see your ones there. Lack of technical skills. Okay, maybe we did influence the leading the jury, as they say, leading the witness. Lack of technical skills, and then slow time to market is the four. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to close this and jump into my presentation there now. You should still be seeing my screen. Fantastic. Let me reset my stopwatch here. So as the go-to-market specialist for managed cloud services, really what I do is I focus on helping organizations speed up their delivery time by using our managed application platform and help them through the adoption of that journey. So that's really what I focus on here. Now, you may have noticed that there were some color coding in the pain points I shared before. So these are the actual broader use cases that we see. And when I talk to IT leaders, this is what I guess the general buckets tend to be. So, managing your hybrid cloud environments, innovation backlog is, new technologies can't keep up with decision-making processes. Use case 3 is delivering the exceptional user experience, understanding that user journey. Cost optimization is always top of mind, even though we didn't vote it up today. And then migrate and modernize existing applications. So having the right skill sets, having the right technologies, the new architectures and platforms. So with that, I'll jump into my presentation here. I'll keep it nice and quick. It is hump day and it is late in the afternoon. But really what this slide is about is, look, there's a lot of technologies that are driving this digital transformation. You could throw the pandemic or COVID-19 into this word cloud as well. That's been a key driver as well. I think at the high level, though, really when it comes to IT leaders and C-level people, is they need to understand where to focus their resources. Okay, do we go all in on AI machine learning? How do we balance that? As Raymond and I were talking about, how do we balance that with our budgets in terms of keeping the lights on as well? So we need to look at ways to efficiently adopt these new technologies, finding the right use cases, iterating and getting that user experience so we can drive competitive advantage, business agility in the marketplaces. And, data is becoming increasingly important. BMW, you may have heard of them. They're turning into a technology company. They've got, if you think about it, edge and IoT, to provide innovative and new services for drivers of BMW, you're looking at connecting multiple devices to come up with great new use cases. Things like, hey, where's the nearest parking availability slot? Of course, we've got things like self-driving cars. Okay. Other things they're looking at is with the shift to electric vehicles. Some of the services they're providing, BMW Group is providing, is where's the nearest charging station? Is the charging station busy? Can I book a slot there? How much is it going to cost me? So if you think about it, in the back end, there's a lot of stuff going on, from that data collection to the real-time analytics, the AI machine learning as well. And you need a platform and architecture that can support that, because with BMW Group, they're not talking about tens of sensors. They're talking about millions of cars and billions of requests per week. So really what they need is a consistent way to manage all of these devices and collect the data so that the users can have, the end users, the drivers of the car, can have a seamless, good experience there. So that's quite an interesting case study. And the links are here on the slides. We will share the slides after today as well. So how do you build about that across the hybrid cloud, right? So at Red Hat, we believe hybrid cloud is the future. And what we say is you should be able to run your workloads anywhere, whether it's physical, in the cloud, through to the edge, regardless of your applications. We want to be managing them, your traditional, your cloud native, your AI machine learning workloads, and your ISV package apps. They need to be managed in a consistent manner. Otherwise, it gets too complicated. You've got issues with security and configurations and so forth. So we have Red Hat OpenShift, our application platform, that provides a consistent experience across all your applications, across all your environments. You basically deploy it once and you run it anywhere you need. And we've got automation and tooling and ecosystems around that to help support that journey to the hybrid cloud. Now, the first key topic that you guys wanted to hear about today was the increased complexity and then the governance and compliance. So they're the slides I'm going to focus on now. So I think it's important to level set in terms of what hybrid cloud and multi-cloud is. So basically, when I say multi-cloud, I'm talking about workloads running on different cloud providers. For argument's sake, on IBM and on Azure, but there's no workload portability. There's no integration between those applications. Hybrid cloud, on the other hand, is running your workloads on-premise in multiple cloud providers, and we have a consistent way of managing those workloads, orchestrating them, and the workloads themselves, the applications, there's a level of interoperability, portability between them. So we can move workloads from our on-premise and burst them up to the cloud, to IBM Cloud, for instance, and then move them across to Azure as you see fit. Now, this brings about a lot of challenges in managing and governance, which leads to our next slide here. So the way I've built this up is we've got OpenShift as the consistent platform across all of our environments, bare metal right through to the edge. And we need to manage that complexity. So some of the capabilities that OpenShift provides, it is a Kubernetes-based platform. So we are talking about containers and orchestration there. But because of that, or rather on top of the Kubernetes layer, what we do is that we provide abstractions, developer productivity tools that help you manage that and speed up your time to market, as well as reducing that complexity. So using containers, we provide consistent environments. Everything is stored as code, infrastructure as code. So you can, your dev environment looks like your test environment, looks like your production environment. A key thing in OpenShift is we include the CI and CD pipelines, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and you can set that up to go with your with your governance processes and your checkpoints to make sure you've done all the verification at each stage in the release process. Because it's automated, it's also released faster, and you know it's within compliance because you write the rules, you put the guardrails in place for the developers. Next up is configuration management. So everything is stored in source control. I mentioned that before, so it's easy to rebuild your applications, rebuild your environments from scratch. From an operations perspective, the platform, OpenShift, it provides you with automated day one and day two scripts to help you manage the environments and apply that governance there. It's secure by default from the container-based structure through to the configurations, which are optimized for this. It runs on a container-optimized version of Linux to reduce the attack surface, and it is expandable by nature. So that's how I see OpenShift reduces the complexity of our IT environments. Next up is around the governance and control. right? So we want flexibility, but we need to govern what developers are doing. We can't just give them the keys to the kingdom and let them do whatever they want. So again, on top of the OpenShift platform, we provide additional capabilities for more productivity from the developers, but also providing the governance and compliance, addressing those challenges there. So I talked about consistent environments, but with the self-service provisioning in OpenShift, you can predefine what tooling is available to your product teams, to your developers. So whether it's the database layer, so a cloud native database or a traditional database, whether it's the middleware, the frameworks, all of this is available within a GUI developer catalog. So within a few clicks, the developers will have all of the tooling they need to build their applications there. I talked about the CI/CD pipelines before and the configuration management. Everything is stored in Git, and we extend that to GitOps-based workflows to provide additional control. Because it's declarative-based, you can see the gap in what the production environment looks like compared to the desired state, and then you can remedy that in an automated manner. On top of that, we provide automated operations from operators through to installation scripts. And again, containers are secure by default. Now, the next thing we looked at was the lack of technical skills. That was the number 3 thing that we wanted to cover today. Now, one thing I'm seeing increasingly when it comes to OpenShift, you can deploy it yourself and self-manage it yourself. You bring your own hardware, whether it's in your data center or in the cloud. But increasingly, we're seeing organizations wanting to have OpenShift as a managed service. And we at Red Hat, we're neutral. We provide OpenShift as a managed service across all the major cloud providers, in particular, IBM Cloud. So what this means is that you're getting the OpenShift platform, but you don't have to worry about the underlying complexity of managing it day to day. We provide the people and skills, our SREs, our site reliability engineers. They're monitoring the platform for day 1, day 2 operations, from provisioning your clusters through to proactive monitoring, security, patching, and upgrades, and the availability of your workloads there. We provide the processes and automation, the best practices. So we've got various scripts and tooling to help you accelerate your time to value. Developers are able to be more productive sooner. We've also configured the OpenShift installation. It's opinionated. It's optimized for security and scalability and performance. So you don't have to worry about it there. Last is the support and security around the managed service here. So we provide a 99.95% uptime availability, and it's 24/7 support in that, which is an industry leading standard there. So our global site reliability engineering team, they have over 2 million man hours of experience managing these platforms there. So as a user of the managed service, you're benefiting from that experience. And basically, it means you don't have to worry about running OpenShift. You can focus on what's important to your business, which is the application layer, the services. That's what differentiates you from the competition, not managing a Kubernetes platform. That's our job there. So just looking at the time, that's actually the top 3 things that you pick. So that means I can go through and skip through to the end here, which is around, here we go, our customer success stories. So really, I think the official count is over 2,000 customers, primarily in the enterprise, use OpenShift to run their workloads, whether they're mission critical or internal. And there's no particular vertical that we focus on. We can see banks, we can see healthcare there, we can see transportation, and many different verticals are using OpenShift to run their applications and drive that innovation, that digital transformation in their organization. So here's one of my favorite case studies. This is Macquarie Bank, a digital-only bank based in Australia. And if you know anything about the Australian banking market, there are 4 major banks, and then there's all the rest. So Macquarie had to innovate. They had to do things differently. It is a consumer-focused bank, so they don't have the budget of the big 4. They've been using OpenShift running on the cloud for a long time now. And they've got some very impressive stats. With a small team managing OpenShift, I believe it was 4 to 6 people, they're able to support 42 different product teams, over 300 applications. From that, they're running on AWS, as you can see here. But again, OpenShift can run on any environment of your choosing. Now, some of the great stats is that they're doing hourly deployments of blue-green environments. So basically, they've got two environments and they switch users over and they test new features. Whatever's more successful, that becomes the next version of their application. Even more impressively is that they rebuild their online banking every 90 days from scratch. They tear it all down. And I mentioned before, the configuration management, everything is code. They're able to rebuild it within minutes there. This is great because it means you know exactly what production looks like. Production is always refreshed and ready to go. And it also improves their security and their auditability and compliance because they rebuild it from code every 90 days. And on top of that, they've got 4 clusters running in the cloud, and it's a self-service mechanism for their developers, their product teams. They no longer have to log tickets for requesting new tooling. It's all available within the developer catalog in the OpenShift GUI there. So that's a very impressive outcome there. Additional to this, here's some studies by, in this case, IDC, showing the business value of running the OpenShift application platform. So 600 plus return on investment over 5 years. You can read the stats there. I think most important for me is the bottom left stat there, the 2 times new applications per year. So you're getting doubling the output from the same amount of inputs. So it's a great use of resources. It amplifies your developers' reach, or rather their productivity. So last slide for me, hopefully I'm close to on time. So in summary, OpenShift is really about empowering your developers, giving them the tooling they need, addressing those governance and compliance challenges as well. So from the IT operator's perspective, you can automate the processes, operate securely from end to end. You define the release processes, what tools are available. So you're ticking the box in terms of your governance and control, but you're also simplifying things for developers because they've already got all the tooling and catalogs they need. And it's proven for business leaders in terms of delivering innovation faster. So with that, I am out of time. I'll hand back to my colleague Raymond to take us through how OpenShift ties in with IBM Cloud Satellite and how to manage across multiple different clusters and providers. Raymond, I've stopped sharing. Over to you.
So thanks, Paul. And you know, I think you have covered most of, you know, how clients can leverage, you know, a Kubernetes platform like OpenShift to gain consistency and governance, address some of those technical skills and security. So that's great. I think IBM Cloud Satellite comes in how do we help clients bring that powerful capabilities to any location that they want, right? Because there's always going to be restrictions with regards to you know, regulations or policies and so on, or just simply cost of deploying out of their own prem. But yet, how do they leverage all the great capabilities of OpenShift and the managed capabilities of OpenShift? So a managed OpenShift service by itself simplifies for the client. We want to simplify that further and introduce agility to that further through IBM Cloud Satellite, okay? So, but before I do that, I thought, you know, I wanted to share what are the, you know, services that most of our clients look at consuming, or most customers look at consuming. You could see Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud being right in the middle of that. But there are many different technologies that, you know, the cloud offers, IBM Cloud offers. It's around advanced technology around AI, analytics, blockchain, and so on. Capabilities around middleware, automation, security, you know, data, databases, analytics tools, foundation, open source services like, you know, Kubernetes, you know, cloud database, open stack database like Mongo, and so on, and infrastructure. So, you know, IBM Cloud offer all these services. We probably have the largest infrastructure you know, variety in the market among all clouds, having Z and Power as part of our portfolio as well. But more importantly, on the right, you will see that we have strong enterprise governance tools, security tools around, you know, access management, logging and monitoring. And something very unique is about bringing your own keys and keeping your own keys. So it's not uncommon for cloud providers to be able to allow you to bring your own keys, but to be able to keep it such that we as a cloud provider have no access, and I mean technical ability to actually look at your keys or use your keys. That's something unique to the IBM proposition, and of course API and console. Other services that will be made available, in fact launched already, are industry-related cloud, like telecommunication and financial services cloud are very specific to the industry. For example, in FS Cloud, very specific around security and compliance to banking regulatory requirements. So these are some of the services. And why is this? Why am I sharing this? Is because these are the services that can be made available to any location that the client wants via cloud satellite. So this is the richness of the kind of services that can be made available anywhere, right? And you can see at the bottom here, cloud satellite plays a role in how we deliver all services on top to any of this or any location, including other public clouds. I won't spend time on this. This is just show these are the 190 over services or even 200 services currently available. The previous chart was just a summary of that. Now, let's go to cloud satellite. So what was the key principles behind IBM launching cloud satellite and the design principles behind that? It's really about our customer ask. Basically, IBM has been engaging in enterprise for 100 years actually, and we always listen to what the client wants, right? So clients say, I want to consume public cloud experience everywhere. I want to use the public cloud services everywhere. I want to have AI services next to my data, which is on-prem or at the edge. I want to be able to use it, but today I can't because most AI services runs on the cloud. Some of those cloud services, or managed software or managed platform only runs on the cloud. For example, OpenShift, managed OpenShift today runs on the cloud, right? And that's going to change with the launch of a satellite. They're looking at single management and operation experience. So 97% of, 67% of enterprises list consistency of management as a key concern. And this is true, true to our different engagement with our most, I would say, most critical industries or most regulated industries. The client shares that I have different teams using different tools. Some use, private cloud, some use AWS, some use IBM. And the issue I have is I have no consistent way of managing. And there lies the issue of security breaches, right? When you have more platform that you're using, more tools you're using, no consistent way of managing your development lifecycle and day-to operations, your SRE operations, it means that there are more loopholes that security breaches will happen. That's what the client wants. I want a single management and operation experience. Right? They're looking at ownership of operation, governance, and updates, so that they can focus on developing the application and not running the operations. Right? And flexibility. Right? They want to be able to run wherever they need, whether it's a cost reason, whether it's an anti-lock-in reason, or whether it's just something that they need to deploy near the edge or near the data. They want to have that flexibility to run those services and application wherever it makes sense. So that's really some of the key ones that our clients have given us feedback. Hundreds of customers have given us feedback. And also some of the real world challenges that we see today in the digital transformation journey, right? Latency needs. I love to do some advanced analytics on my data, but I can't do that if the cloud is not hosted in my country or near the city where I am. Data residency, I spoke about that. Lack of agility, I spoke about that. Lack of visibility as well. I spoke about local management. They want to be able to reduce the scope creep and have a decentralized, centralize a decentralized structure, if I could put it that way, right? Lack of version control. So you have different teams running different platforms, running different systems, You do not know what kind of versioning are they running, different version of OS, different version of Kubernetes platform like OpenShift, and other middleware platforms. So there's a lack of version control there, inconsistent talent availability. That came up in the poll. This is becoming a critical issue. In fact, I think this is probably one of the single largest contributor to delays in project due to people attrition, resource attrition. And when you have many different tools, many different variety of tools, you need variety of skills, and which means that when attrition happens, one of those two resource leaves, the projects get hold up. So that is a major issues that we see today in many of our clients, especially when it comes to project staying to their project timeline, right? Inability to instantly customize requirement reports and look at financial modeling so that they know what's the cost on running on the cloud, what's the usage patterns and so on. So these are some of the real challenges that most of our clients actually face. And many actually adopt to really stopgap measures, really plug and play, plug the hole here and maybe create a problem somewhere else. So, most of our clients are looking for answers on that, okay? And with that, IBM launched Cloud Satellite, and we aim to address all the challenges you talked about earlier. You heard Saurabh talk about, security being one of his top two. And I think we look at bringing security in a consistent, managed way. I think there's a saying in a security world that, breach is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. But what you want to do is to be able to have a consistent way of deploying and managing your security policies and security tools and posture, so that when the breach happens, you are able to quickly trace and track and remediate those breaches. And I think that's what we want to do, is to bring consistency through Red Hat OpenShift, tools like Red Hat OpenShift, and to bring another layer of management and deployment method to bring those consistency as well, to enhance those consistency so that, it takes care, it helps the security posture of the client, right? So that's what we hope to do from a security point of view. But, the key function that we want to do is also to make sure that software, IBM Cloud Services that I shared earlier, about 190 of them, 200, we're growing every day, software catalog, IBM Cloud Packs, and customers' custom application or partners' custom application can be deployed via the OpenShift that supports OpenShift can be deployed via the OpenShift and satellite architecture. So Red Hat OpenShift on IBM Cloud is a key service that can be deployed via cloud satellite into any location as a managed service. So that will be the first, I think, in the industry. And let me cite an example of how this helped a real life client, engagement that we have today. So the customers today is using AWS, they are using Azure, and they have already said, they are going to use the managed Red Hat OpenShift service because they lack the skills or lack the enough skills to manage. They want to focus on development. They want to focus on using on the application. Now, the issue that they shared was, well, some application I'm going to run on AWS because I've got a lock-in contract with them on infrastructure. Some I'm going to run on Azure. I'm going to use ARO. I'm going to use Rosa in AWS. And I'll have two different screens to monitor, and I have two different ways to track. And that add-on, I have OpenShift running on-prem as well. So 3 different monitoring mechanisms, 3 different tracking mechanisms. So what we actually shared with them and got them really interested was that, what if you could still leverage those AWS and Azure contracts and your on-prem, infrastructure, but yet have a managed OpenShift by IBM Cloud deployed in all those infrastructure and have a single pane of glass to monitor all those deployments. And that really got them excited. And I think that is really the key. There was a great example that I thought I would share to, illustrate, what we're trying to do here is to actually bring services that the client wants to consume and get it delivered in a managed way to any infrastructure, whether it's existing client infrastructure, the private cloud, integrated appliance at the edge or in other hyperscalers. So that's really, I think, or in a nutshell, what IBM Cloud Satellite aims to do, right? And this is just a different illustration, more animated, how we bring services from Cloud Satellite through a satellite link to any location where they will host our satellite location. So what it means is that all the clients need to provide or provision an instance of a Linux host. We support Red Hat Enterprise Linux only on an x86 environment. And as long as those are being provided, IBM can recognize those hosts as an IBM Cloud Satellite location. And things that are services that are supported for satellite in IBM Cloud will be able to be deployed in those satellite locations as long as we have those requirements met. Okay, run through the next few charts really quickly about the journey and the different areas. Reiterate some of the points that I made earlier. So one is really easy to deploy Cloud Satellite. You just choose the location, you provision those locations, whether it's in in other clouds or in your own environment. Register with IBM Cloud. Choose your and then roll out consistent security policy. Use the IAM access management tools available, and provision the services as you want into the satellite location. So that's really getting started, really easy. You can try it with the free account that you can register in IBM Cloud, today after this, and see how easy that can be. And then with that we establish a satellite link, which is a zero trust link. Those who are familiar with security will understand what zero trust really means. And it's automated, deployed, and you can use your own keys and encryption on it so that you control and protect what you want to go through that link. The link is established not for the purpose of having data moved, as in customer data, application data moved between IBM Cloud and the host. It is for the purpose of management. So if you want us to manage the OpenShift, for example, we need to make sure that the health of OpenShift is healthy, the traffic is conditions are good. We need to let you know if we need to create new clusters or deploy more compute. So those are the information that we need to know really about traffic management and monitoring and log management, but nothing to do with application or customer. So that's really what we're looking at to look at through this link. However, even then we allow the client to decide how they want to manage it and what they want to allow through. Of course, the lesser we can manage, but net of it is that we provide that agility and flexibility, okay? I spoke about this, I won't spend time. So basically you can rapidly deploy many different services from IBM Cloud into using Cloud Satellite to any location. But just to add on, with Red Hat OpenShift being a key service of that, we want that once you deploy that into a satellite location, you could use the operator hub to automate some other custom non-managed applications that you might have custom built or ISV or different Red Hat partners software onto the satellite location as well, using the operator hub. Just that those applications may not be managed or you may have to self-manage, but you could leverage the mechanism to improve your ease of deployment. Okay. Day two operation made easy. I mentioned that. So you can see, from this quick screenshot, node capacity cluster inside, what's the CPU usage, the memory usage, all this through your different deployments into different location in a single pane of glass. And it can be rule-based as well. Okay. So I've got the last three charts, which I hope I still have time, but I'll run through it quickly. These are some of the real use cases that we have since the launch in March. We've got a banking customer that have gone through a merger acquisitions. They got IT sprawl, different banks, the two different banks that use different technologies. They want to merge it, they want to modernize it. So, satellite was a great way with OpenShift, was a great way for them to actually, re-architect their application and deploy them to different locations and have a central logging and monitoring and management console for them to manage this IT sprawl. So they're going to consolidate it, modernize it, and they're leveraging satellite, IBM Cloud Services and satellite with Roche to achieve that, right? So this is a merger acquisition use cases. We've got a use case in Germany for healthcare, especially in pandemic and vaccination management. They realized that communication between different hubs, clinics and hospitals was challenging. The only way they could do it today was through social media apps, private app, mobile phone application, which was not secure. So we worked with them to roll some new applications, leveraging cloud native and containerized applications, leveraging satellite to have it deployed in the different hubs, clinics and hospitals easily and consistently at speed, and be able to manage that. And the data that is captured in those clinics and hubs are analyzed in those locations, and the insights are able to be shared across across the whole network of hospitals, so that any patterns of spread or any vaccination patterns in terms of which demography is vaccinated and all that could be easily shared, and insights could be easily shared across the network. Okay, that's another use case. And last but not least is really another retail customers with hundreds of retail shops trying to unlock insights at the stores by bringing the AI models and application to the store and be able to provide instantaneous insights so that they could have a better customer experience and engagement, upsell, cross-sell there and then, at the store, and also, in different locations, even in the online store where they host different application and different online fronts. With that, I think that's pretty much my last chat. So thank you very much for your time. And I believe, Winston, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you. And I'll give it over to Simon. Simon will take charge.
Simon.
Okay, then. So look, we've heard, all about some of the interesting problems that you're trying to solve, and we've heard about some of the technologies that we can use to solve those problems. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the garage. So the garage is a great place to get started. To try and bring these technologies together. Also, but bring your business problems, to us in the garage in order to, solve the specific business problems that you have, build new platforms, modernize your tech stack. So, just showing you there some of the sort of things that every company nowadays is really aspiring to, especially, our larger enterprise companies. They're really being stretched now. Everyone has an innovation division. They're trying to deliver more like a startup. And the reason we established the garage back in the inception of IBM Cloud many years ago now was really to introduce some of the processes and methods of native cloud to these enterprise clients. So we've been very successful over the years, and we've refined the method. And I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you could start on your cloud native journey and come and talk to the garage to get started on that. So just a little bit about how we do this and how we approach it. So basically, we take the breadth and the depth of IBM's 100+ years of technical know-how and put that into our garages, which prior to COVID were physical spaces where people would come in and spend either half a day or 2 days in order to work with us on their business problems. So, and into these teams would bring our architects, our designers, but also quite often companies come to us with very specific problems that need to be solved with very specific skills. It might be data science, or it might be blockchain. We're looking at quantum solutions. So, and these are all the sorts of technical skills that we can then leverage from the wider IBM to bring into these garage engagements, so that you can get started on that cloud journey. So how do we do this? So as I mentioned before, we really focus on a lean and fast approach. So, we want to bring the right product to market. We want to bring it to market quickly, and we want to validate that in the market really quickly. So if the idea that we come together to build is not the right one, or it needs to change, we can change that quickly. And that's from using this process that I want to talk to you a little bit more, which we call the garage method. So it starts with co-creation. So that might be a framing exercise. That could be a half a day for a solution that's really very well considered already, and just making sure both the product management, product owner, and design and technical teams are all aligned on that particular problem. Or it might be a client who is coming to us with a new platform, a great big idea that they need to build. We'd probably look at a 2-day design thinking exercise. We do that remotely, of course, like everyone else in the COVID world. In the non-COVID world, that is a physical 2-day exercise where we apply enterprise design thinking to your particular problem space. And we exit that workshop with a very well-defined hypothesis and a way that we can test that hypothesis in the market, which is our MVP statement, which is when we go on to co-execute. So co-execute then would typically be something like a minimal viable product that we want to build. And really, what's really important is that and when we, I've mentioned that we co-create, we co-execute, we want to work with you to build these things. Now, some clients don't have a technical team at all, and that's okay. They might just have the big idea. Some, a small startup is a good example of that. So we can provide all the technical skills to do that, of course, but our preferred approach is to co-execute with our clients. So then, as a company, then you're not tied necessarily just to the garage forever to manage and run this problem. Your team is getting enabled and skilled as we go. So a minimal viable product allows us to build out and test a hypothesis very, very quickly in the marketplace, and making sure that we've built the right product. And then if we need to change that, we can do so before we go into a full production release. We don't throw away that code though. That MVP is a pre-production release, and we build on that, which of course is how we can do that now with cloud. And making sure that you still get value for the time spent in that MVP, and it's not thrown away as some sort of science experiment. And then we scale that out. So it's great to be able to use all the fantastic tools, cloud native tools and DevOps tools when building out MVP, but we need to take that into day 2 operations as well. So making sure that you've got the tooling to manage and support that ongoing production release. So this is what a typical example might look like. Now, not every one of our clients goes through every one of those boxes. In fact, I don't know anyone that would probably go through all of those. But basically, your journey might start with framing and design thinking. If you're really looking at a innovation type exercise, perhaps you're looking at moving some workloads though from on-premise onto cloud, and that's more of a technical discovery and architecture. So depending where your cloud journey is starting is where you would start in that co-creation piece. We'd then move into MVP build out, and then into our co-operate phase. So just want to highlight very quickly here a Gartner report that we commissioned just to determine the actual return on investment that people were seeing on our garage engagements. It was very pleasant to actually see this return back to us. I think the really key one there for me is 6 times as many projects going into production. So I know that everyone's got either a garage or innovation space, but are they producing production ready products, and that's the real test and the key outcome for any organisation like ours that is taking this really innovative and lean approach to building out applications and platforms quickly. So just these are just a list of some of the clients that we're working with this year at the moment. And the reason I'm highlighting this, there's some fantastic quotes there on the right that I'll let you read through as well. Every one of them has been quite pleasantly surprised with the process and the approach. So I'd love to have a talk to you further about that if you've got the time. But also you can see the clients there are, some are very small and some are very large, small startups in Australia like Nico and, large $100 billion companies like SoftBank in Japan. So, companies come to us for various different reasons. They might already have a lot of technical skills and just need to understand lean agile and bringing platforms and products to market. Others, like the smaller startups, might need the breadth and the depth and the muscle of IBM to bring all of the technical aspects to their business solution or innovative idea. So just I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I won't spend too much time on this. This is just a good example of a project that we finished here in Melbourne, Australia. I think the really important thing here is not so much the technical outcome. We were able to build a dashboard for caring for the aged and the elderly as they transition into elderly care. It's a very personal, it's a very complicated design solution to solve, but Mercer then were able to white label this, and they're able now to sell this on to many other clients. In fact, I think they're going to be selling it back to IBM, which is great and kind of funny at the same time. So it's a good example of building something with us. You own the IP, you get then to resell it. You can bring the garage back at any time you like to refine it or further productionize it. But it's your product and it gets you started on that cloud journey. So just on my last slide now, I think we've just about hit time. So I just wanted to give you a chance to come back and talk to me. There's a QR code that you can scan there, and it'll give you access to a free framing and technical discovery to maybe talk a little bit more about your solution or your cloud journey that you want to start. Garage is a great place to start it. So I'd love to talk to any of you that are looking at embarking on that cloud journey with us. And with that, I think we've just about hit time. So I'll hand it back to you, Winston.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. And what you see in front of you is basically a poll question. So what Simon was talking about in terms of how we want to go one step further with complimentary garage workshops. So please do select one of the options. You have a half-day business framing workshop, or you have a one-day technical discovery workshop. In that way, we can co-create, co-execute, and cooperate. More importantly, it also allows you to know where you are and what's the next step, especially when transformation has a lot of goals, competing goals, and you sometimes might need to recalibrate. I'll give you some time to actually go through this while I'll look at the other end notes. Well, to continue also your journey, we have created a landing page, which I remarked upon early in this discussion. We have created this page especially for this session, as well as it includes all the white papers, videos, as well as some interviews that I've done with Paul and Raymond. Paul was on Kubernetes technical depth, and Raymond was on how Cloud Satellite is motivated by giving companies choice. So please do go to the website and do read this or download the content as you like. You will get the link with your next EDM that we will sort of beam it up to you. Feel free, and if you do have any comments or you do need to talk further, please do reach out to any of our presenters today. With that, I would say thank you. Thank you for all the time that you have given us. I hope you found this session really useful. And on behalf of IBM and Red Hat, have a great evening and be safe.